Okay, so we're going to get started. I just want to briefly make a few comments myself. So I'm Martin Farrows. I'm the CEO of Soapbox Labs. You're all very welcome. I see lots of people introducing themselves in the chat. On this webinar, which is the final webinar, hard to believe that it's the final webinar of 2022. And the title of the webinar today is How EarlyBird Uses Voice Technology for Dyslexia Screening. And I'm delighted to say that we have Carla Small, who's the CEO and co-founder of EarlyBird Education, on the webinar. We also have from the Soapbox team, Brenda McGurk, who's our head of education product, and Amelia Kelly, who is our CTO. Again, just a little bit of housekeeping for those who have just joined. Please introduce yourselves in the chat, and we will be using the Q&A for questions. So please put your Q&A in the questions, or your questions in the Q&A section. We are recording this session, and that will be sent out later on this week. So for those of you who are new to Soapbox, we do voice technology for kids in education, pre-K right through to sort of 12. We power language learning, oral reading, fluency, dyslexia screening, math, science, anywhere where a child would want to interact with their voice with technology. And you know, it's kind of appropriate, really, that we will be finishing this year with this webinar. Myself, Carla, met almost 4 years ago, 4 years ago in January, in a very, very cold Boston, if I remember correctly, Carla. Was probably the coldest weather I've ever experienced. We don't get weather like that in Ireland. And it was at a Learn Launch event, and you were working for Boston Children's Hospital at the time in their accelerator, and we got talking about this. So for four years has passed by. It's great to see these products coming to the market. For me personally, it's kind of a really impactful use case, an example of how we can build transformational technology for kids. I have a son who was diagnosed quite late with dyslexia. And, you know, it's one of those examples of where I think, you know, we can use technology really to have transformational impact on kids, because early diagnosis of these kind of reading challenges is so impactful for them in terms of their outcomes. So, you know, I'm delighted to have Carla with us. I'm going to hand over now to you, Carla, and maybe you give an introduction first of all around EarlyBird Education, and then move into the demo.
Absolutely, Martin. Thank you. Thank you, Brenda and Amelia and Martin. Great to be with you and an honor to be here. Martin, as you know, as CEO, and I'm Carla Small, CEO and co-founder of EarlyBird Education. As CEO, you make decisions, and one of them is what aspects of the business that you're running you're going to do yourself, and what aspects you're going to partner with someone else to do. And voice recognition is not our core competency, so it was very early on a priority to find a quality partner in that area, and our partnership has just been fantastic. And so I'm thrilled to be able to talk a little bit more about working with Soapbox Labs and how that's enabled us to be better, basically, at what we're doing. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. Can everyone see that? Great. All right, so EarlyBird is leveraging cutting-edge brain science, artificial intelligence, and gamification to actually prevent reading disabilities. And we do that by identifying children and their risk early. And in that window where good and early instruction can actually rewire the brain for reading success. Today, we're going to talk a lot about technology, but we know it's not about technology. It's all about the children. We're all here gathered to talk about the children and think about the children's well-being. So I'd like to start by introducing you to one child, Matthew. I'd like you to meet Matthew. At 4 years of age, he was very energetic, very curious. He could debate philosophy with his older brother and recite science facts like a middle schooler. But there was actually no one better suited to going to school and to learning. But unfortunately, when he got to school, while his peers were learning how to read and how to write, he just was not grasping it. He could not name his letters. He could not recite the alphabet. He couldn't read. And he was getting increasingly frustrated and calling himself stupid. For his mother, it was perplexing and wearisome, but also she was having trouble keeping him interested in school. I know this story well because Matthew is my son, my third child, and my inspiration for EarlyBird. EarlyBird is the brainchild of Dr. Nadine Gaab. She believed that not only is it possible, but important to make assessment fun for children, while also providing the tools and resources to educators so they can take the steps that research tells us will make children successful readers. At its foundation, EarlyBird is based on the research of these two world-renowned researchers, Dr. Nadine Gaab, now at the Harvard School of Education, and Dr. Yaakov Pesher at the Florida Center for Reading Research. And importantly, it's translated to become user-friendly and easy for children and educators. We've had incredible traction. EarlyBird has only been available in schools for less than 2 years. We're already in 20 states. And in the state where we were first authorized to be an early literacy screener per the state regulations, we have 10% market share. Those who use EarlyBird tell us these are the things that they most value in EarlyBird. So first of all, I mentioned that it's a game that children can play and can be used before they even learn to read. So that means it's available early and it's accessible to all children. EarlyBird does not know if you're Black or white or rich or poor. And that lack of bias is important to us. The scores are available immediately, and you'll see why that's so important for us to partner with Soapbox Labs to get that data quickly. It is the most comprehensive assessment out there, and I'll talk more about that and show you that in the demo. And then per our original, very important foundational belief, it needs to also help educators figure out what to do next. Once you understand the detail of a child's profile, how do you improve the way they're learning and how do you make them successful readers? And as I mentioned, it's evidence-based. It was developed and tested at the #1 pediatric hospital in the world. So what is EarlyBird? It consists of 3 main components. It's a gamified screener. It's a data platform with many rich things on the platform. One is a teacher dashboard, individualized student profiles, evidence-based instructional resources, and also parent reports available in English and Spanish. And along the way, we partnered deeply with our school, district, and state partners. So EarlyBird's available as a 3 times a year benchmark. After each session, we'll do in-depth workshops with the educators that have been using EarlyBird to help them understand what the data means and how to translate that into action and use the next steps resources. So I'd like to demo EarlyBird, but before I do, I just want to refresh everyone's memory on some important things. So we all know the importance of both word reading and language comprehension when trying to teach someone to read. Basically, in order to be a good reader, a fluent good reader, one needs to have the basic mechanics of word reading coupled with language comprehension. The exciting thing about EarlyBird is those things are captured in one place for a teacher or educator to see. And EarlyBird is unique in the extent to which we're capturing oral language skills. Additionally, it's a time saver. If you were to get this level of comprehensiveness using the more traditional means, you would be using multiple different types of often paper pencil screeners. So we're excited that in one place, we're giving a comprehensive view that represents the best that science has to offer in terms of assessment. So before I move into demonstration, I'd like to share one other exciting piece of information, and that is that this summer, we launched EarlyBird Families. Motivated increasingly by my own experience, and Martin, now I hear about yours as well. It is all too often that children are not identified early. And as a mother of a child who wasn't diagnosed until he was 8, I could have told you at 3 that something was going on. I went on a 5-year journey trying to figure out what's up, what do I do about it? Am I getting him the right resources? What does it all mean? Help me understand this. And that's what EarlyBird Families is all about. So you meet with a literacy specialist, your child plays the game. They think it's fun. They don't know they're being assessed. We get the results and help you understand those next steps, what to do about it, and how to take action. So I'd like to move on to the demo now. This is a typical dashboard that we would show you for a kindergarten classroom. As you can see, across the top, you see the key foundational skills for learning to read. Naming speed, also called RAN, sound symbol correspondence, phonemic and phonological awareness, and oral language comprehension. What you can see is the colors. So we made this very easy for teachers to see pretty quickly where there are issues. So dark blue is the lowest quintile, light blue is the lowest 40th percentile of the classroom. So if you're focusing on where you want to spend extra instruction, you know immediately your eye takes you exactly where you need to go. What's exciting about EarlyBird is we can see teachers using this both horizontally and vertically. So I'll talk a little bit also about the predictive risk scores. So there are two risk scores here. There's a risk flag you see here on the left. That is a risk for dyslexia. And basically, based on a multifactorial algorithm and based on years and years of research as to what are the most predictive indicators of where a child will be likely to then develop dyslexia if they don't receive the appropriate interventions. And then the second predictive algorithm is around potential for word reading. And this is the opportunity to understand who's having a challenge learning word reading and will need more explicit instruction. So when you look at the whole classroom and you look from left to right, you can see, and we'll take this student here who's sort of a typical profile of a child with dyslexia. You can see that they've been flagged for dyslexia. They're at risk for potential for word reading. But most importantly, and this is really the sweet spot of EarlyBird, you're getting a whole range of information that helps you understand what the issue is and what you can do about it. So this is a child who, honestly, much like my Matthew, might have gone undetected because they're highly verbal. They have they have a very strong, strong vocabulary. They're strong in oral sentence comprehension, but they have a weakness in phonological awareness at the foundation. And in this case, this child also has a processing issue regarding rapid automatized naming. So this is really helpful for a teacher to understand, wow, I might have missed this child had I not done the EarlyBird assessment, because that child was answering all the questions and sitting at the front of the classroom. And then also you see the other profiles where you can understand, for example, this might be a child who doesn't speak English at home, so their vocabulary is weak, but they're strong on the phonological awareness areas. We then have the ability for a teacher to click through and get a student-specific report. This is useful for IEP meetings, for parent-teacher conferences, etc. And where a child, this is the same data presented in a user-friendly fashion. This is where you can print out the family report and use that data again to share with the family. And wherever there's a weakness here, wherever there's a highlighted color, over here is the really exciting part of our Next Steps resources. So customized to each child, you click through and you learn more about what's going on. And so EarlyBird is really designed to upskill teachers' knowledge in a very time-efficient manner, providing just-in-time resources so they can get up to speed very quickly. If they know it well, they can move on. If they don't, they can dive more deeply and learn and get more resources. So this is a whole section that we have, and we have one for every subtest that provides detailed information about letter sound. So what is letter sound? What did that subtest do? What does good instruction look like when you're teaching letter sound? We provide instructional mapping. So based on how the child does, you can move along the mapping course to provide the resources that they need. I can show you there are materials, lesson plans, progress monitoring tools, and things that you can send home. Here's an example of our sound wall cards that a teacher could use and even share with the family. Here's the sound wall in a desktop version as well. And then if you go down, you can see we also have lesson plans and activities here. This is the type of resource that's provided on the EarlyBird platform. So it tells you what functional area, what foundational skill you're working on, what specific skill, the objectives of the lesson, steps in the lesson plan, resources, and things that you can do in the classroom. So that tells you a little bit about our dashboard. And now I'd like to show you the game. Martin, do you have any questions or comments before I move on to the game?
No, we haven't got any questions yet. I've asked everybody to post the questions in the Q&A. So maybe what we'll do, Carla, is once you've done the demo of the game, if there's any questions at that point, we can cover them.
Perfect. Okay, I'm going to move on to the game then. Okay, so this is how a teacher would access the game. They'd see a list of their students, and we'll pick this practice student here to start. And I click next, and we're going to go right into the game board. So I'll be quiet and let you listen. I'm going to go into unlocked mode since we're going to play around.
Ready to go on an adventure? You are going to travel through the city to sail your toy boat in the pond. Your friend Pip will join you. On the way to the pond, you will meet animal friends who will have games for you to play and surprises for you to collect. Pip will play the games first, and then you will have a turn. Ready? Let's go!
So the game is designed to be substantially self-administered. EarlyBird is available right now in pre-K, kindergarten, and first grade, and we'll be adding second and third grade soon. And basically what we want to do is make sure it's enjoyable for the kids, but make it easy for the teachers, so the burden of administration is not high. So you'll see with every game that they play, every subtest, they meet an animal along the way. That animal will explain the game to Pip. Pip is the friendly toucan that is the child's friend to take them on the journey through the city. They'll explain the game to Pip. Pip will do some practice. Then the child has some practice, and then they move right into the assessment. So I'll start that with this game right here.
Hello. Let's play with letters and their sounds. Each letter has a sound. I will give you the sound, and you will touch the letter that goes with it. Pip, touch the letter that makes the sound Z. Yes, that's right. Now it's your turn.
Which of these makes the sound
Z? So now it's been explained to me. I'm the student. I play the game. The first one is a practice.
Not quite right. Try again.
Which of these makes the sound
Z? Good job. Let's try another.
Which of these makes the sound
Ch?
So EarlyBird is computer adaptive.
Makes the sound
Y.
Which means that we tighter the child's ability in the first series of questions that we ask them, and then the questions get easier or harder based on how they did, so we can more quickly, more precisely assess their ability.
Which of these makes the sound
G?
So I can get some wrong. I'm not getting feedback because I'm in the middle of the assessment.
Makes the sound
Sh?
Which of these makes the sound
Z?
So after each subtest, the icon is colorized, the child gets the reward, which is at the top. And I can't tell you how happy the children are to play this game. They finish playing and ask if they can play again. They really enjoy it. And as I say, many of them don't even know they're being assessed. And we even have anecdotal stories of children who have never been assessed before, children with autism who get comfortable playing a game. And through this tool, we're able actually to learn their reading profile. So that was sort of a point and click example of an assessment. EarlyBird uses both that and the oral assessments, both being very important to assessing a child's ability. I'm going to share with you nonsense word reading because we know that's so important for early detection of risk. And I'm going to go ahead and skip the instructions, but similarly, it would have Pip do some practice and then the child do some practice.
Hello.
Listen carefully to my silly word and say it the same way you heard it. And remember to say it loud and clear. Vope.
Vope.
Hevino Wajek.
Hevino Wajek.
Nebesuv.
Never.
Fadoik.
Fadoik.
Wame.
Wame.
Lugitome.
Lucky.
Muzygos.
Movie. So I want to show you what immediate means. So we'll go back to the dashboard. We'll go back to the classroom view. We'll go down to the practice student that we've been looking at. And we did non-word repetition, which I had already done once before, but I'm going to refresh this and you'll see the score is populated immediately. So that score went right in based on, actually it was already in, sorry, went right in immediately. Sometimes you have to refresh and sometimes you don't, but it goes automatically. So the teacher is getting the scores as the game is being played. And then I'll just show you one more oral assessment. This is blending. And I'm just going to do a few by way of example, and I'll skip the instructions again for you.
Hi, I want you. What would the word be if I say cup, cake?
Cupcake.
What would the word be if I say
Run.
What would the word be if I say g, I, v?
Give.
What would the word be if I say sh, e, o, t,
So I think that gives you a good sense of both the game and the dashboard and how important that data is for a teacher, but also how accessible it is.
That's great, Carla. We do have a few questions coming in, so it might be worth just taking those now while it's still fresh.
Sure.
Fine. So there's a question around how long does it take for a pre-K to primary age child to take the assessment?
Yes, that's a great question. So obviously it varies a little bit by child, but the pre-K assessment is about 30 minutes long. And because of the oral assessment, we recommend some careful administration. So a pre-K child is going to be administered on a one-to-one basis. That makes sense to us given their age. But when you get to the older children, you're doing small groups. So it's much easier and more quick.
Okay. And a second question here is, has the system been adapted for use in other languages and validated in other countries, especially lower and middle income countries?
That is our dream. It is not something that we've done to date. It's on our roadmap. So we will be building out EarlyBird in other languages and then ultimately going into other countries. Right now, we're very focused on the United States.
Okay. Can you show an example of the family report and state whether it's available in print and electronically?
Yeah, it is a printable report. Let me see. Bear with me while I share screen and pull that up and you guys can see. So to get to that report, you would go to the student level and then you print basically, and you'll see it here. So it gives the details of what the different subtests are. It explains them in family-friendly language, talks about what percentiles and scores mean, and then it shows that child's particular results. So it's very turnkey for the teacher. They don't need to do anything but print it out and share it.
Okay, great. The voices in the game, all white voices, are diverse backgrounds?
That's a good question. So, I think part of what we have to do is acknowledge that we are a fairly young company. So those are all singular sourced voices, but something that is of high priority to us is really doing an audit and cultural assessment. I will say this is based on years of research, and that research was done across the country in pretty much in definitely every region of the country. So there is the results are normed against a demographically very diverse and appropriate population. But some of our voices and things like that, you'll hear they're very similar or whatever. It's the same voice again and again.
And I'm going to take this one and then we're going to move on because there's some of the questions here will also relate to the demo that Amelia is going to do. But there's a question here about even I have trouble hearing some of the sounds clearly, e.g. run versus rum on my laptop. Do you monitor the quality of the sound to ensure that sound distortion is not impacting the scores?
Definitely. We're constantly monitoring, how this is working in the field and what we're doing, and we're constantly evolving and updating the items as a result. So I didn't say, and I probably should, that, I did say this was based on the research of Dr. Gabb, Dr. Pesher. Dr. Pesher is an expert on the intersection of technology and assessment, particularly in reading. And he has done literally decades of research, but most recently, this is based on a really robust sample of data that he's done both across Florida and nationwide, and then the work that we did at Boston Children's Hospital as well. So there are thousands and thousands of students who have been tested through the validation study that are the foundation for this.
Yeah, that might be a good segue to move into the demo around Soapbox, because we work with Yakov as well. So he's involved in both sides of this demonstration in some ways. So maybe Amelia, what we'll do is we'll pass off to you now. Maybe you can show some of the examples of how the voice technology is working in the background to support the work that EarlyBird are doing.
Sorry, I'm muted when I think I'm unmuted, and vice versa. Thanks, Carla, and thanks, Martin. I'm Amelia Kelly. I'm the CTO of Soapbox Labs, and I'm here today with Brenda McGurk, our head of product for education. Am I right, Brenda?
Yes, that's exactly it.
And Brenda's going to help me contextualize and explain some of the examples I'm going to show you. So really what I want to do is just show how the voice recognition that powers products like EarlyBird works under the hood. I'm going to show you some demos that showcase how our technology works, and just give you a bit of inspiration about how it could be used for these types of user experiences. So the reason we built Soapbox Voice Engine, and echoing back to what Carla said, it's not, it is a fun technological challenge, but really it's about the children. We are doing this because when Soapbox Labs started, there was no voice technology specifically built for children. Right now, Soapbox Labs powers 8 of the 10 biggest education companies, voice-enabled early literacy and language learning experiences. And the reason that we're so successful, and the reason why we're the best voice providers for kids, is that for the last 8 or 9 years, we have focused on solely building out this technology using kids' voices, using diverse voices, and making sure that we're building technology that actually works in the situations where children need it the most. And in a large amount of situations, that comes down to early literacy and comes down to language learning, comes down to dyslexia screening. So we have made sure when we were building our products that we are building stuff that actually helps the people who are building the technology like EarlyBird. They need the data points that they can then feed back to the children and to the teachers. And we need to build out technology that offers up those relevant and accurate data points. And accuracy is a huge thing. So like Soapbox Fluency, the Soapbox engine, they've been shown by clients and researchers to offer a level of performance and accuracy on a par with humans. And that's really, really important. You want the technology to help humans, to be an aid for the teachers, the educators, and the parents who are involved in teaching the kids how to read and doing dyslexia screening, etc., etc. And it's really, really important that the technology is making the same kinds of decisions that the human would be making. And we test this internally and we get it externally validated all the time. Another thing that we are very, very passionate about in Soapbox is equity. And that means testing our system very rigorously in all kinds of accents and dialects. and making sure that the technology that's going into these end user products is treating all children equally, regardless of their age, their background, their ethnicity or race, their socioeconomic status or situation, and any other kind of demographics, gender, etc. We make sure that we are building the most equitable technology that we possibly can. So we do this both by ensuring that the underlying AI models that we build are drawn from the most diverse data pool that we can find, and also testing it for specific situations and ensuring that the technology is up to scratch before it goes into these products. So I'm going to show you this under the hood demo. I'm going to show you the Soapbox engine off the shelf and what you can use in a plug and play mode straight off the shelf if you decided to voice enable your product or platform using Soapbox Labs. And yeah, I guess I'll just jump right into it from there. I will share my screen. So this is our lovely front end that shows you what's going on under the hood. So if you were a company like EarlyBird and you wanted to interact with Soapbox or integrate Soapbox into your system, you wouldn't use this front end. This is just something that we use to show you how the system works. But what I'm going to do is start off just very easily and show you what this does. So as a user, you'd send up an audio file and you'd send up what we call a target. In this situation, the target is a sentence that you've asked a child to read. And what our system does is that it tries to find the words or phrases in these targets in the audio file that's been sent up to the system.
My frisbee, he said, it went in the window and I flowed it.
So a general adult off-the-shelf speech systems would take that audio file and attempt to transcribe what the child said. And generally we find when we're dealing with creators of edtech content, that's just not enough. They need something else. They need further analysis of the audio file. And that's what Soapbox Labs gives back. So you can see here that we have the target returned, but also a score next to it of 93%. This is Soapbox's confidence score of how well the child said this sentence, how likely it is that that audio file matched that text. If you dig into this, then you can see that we have surfaced some other data points as well. Word by word in the sentence, we've also returned a target score. We also return the start and end time, so you can enable handy playback. And also you can see that in each word,
Window.
You can see that it's made up of individual speech sounds, etc. And this is really, really important when you get to a situation where a child makes a mistake. So the child struggled with the word followed in this word. Or
Flowed.
They said flowed instead of followed. And you can see if you look into the individual underlying speech sounds, you get the F, but the doesn't exist. So because the child just said flowed.
Flowed.
So the sound in followed comes back scoring low, while all the other underlying phonemes come back scoring high. And you can then infer that the child did not say that phoneme. So it just shows you how discriminative the Soapbox engine is at a very, very granular level that would help for these very short sounds, which is very, very important, of course, in early literacy, for example. So getting into more early literacy specific stuff, I think I'm going to show you a very common thing that children learn when they're learning to read, and that is they're shown a letter and they're asked to read it or pronounce it. So what we've done here to enable this kind of use case, to make this easy for people who are building out products that do this, is that we've made this markup that says letter. And what this does is it tells our system that what the child has been asked to say is the letter G. It's not the sound G. It's not any other thing. It is the letter G. This is particularly useful for the letter C as well, for example, because if you had an off-the-shelf speech recognizer and a child said C, that recognizer would have no idea if it meant the alphabet letter C or if it meant the ocean or if it meant part of the verb to look, for example. So by having this markup, we can specify that we're specifically looking for the letter. Like this is a very, very common child speech kind of situation. But to be honest, I'll show you this, but to be honest, Brenda's our expert here, so I'm going to let her talk about some of these more particular educational scenarios, but I'll just play this to begin with.
E,
So this is G, and you can see the individual breakdown is
G, E.
So Brenda, how common is this in educational settings?
Extremely common, as we know that very early journey that, well, literacy and language learning are journeys, and the children start very early off with these phonological and phonemic awareness type activities. Either the teacher is working with the whole class or in small groups, or the child is working and they're matching what they're hearing to what they're seeing. They're learning that the letter has a name, but the letter also has one or two sounds depending on what that letter is. And it's all that the start of that learning to manipulate language to make sense of it in order to become hopefully a fluent reader. And using things like the letter name, not just being able to name what that letter is or say what that sound is, but then to be able to put that together to spell, or to put those sounds together to either form a word, do decoding, or to manipulate it to create new words. And there are so many ways that this can be done in a fun way for a child to do, whether it's working with the non-words or the silly words, or working with real words, or creating new words, that you can really encourage children to play with language and to start to develop out their sense of meaning and matching the orthography to what they're hearing and what they're saying themselves. And that opportunity not just to be assessed, but to practice, and for the teacher to have that incredible in-time data coming back to them, that they don't have to be with every child. How many times do we hear teachers say, I didn't sign up to be a teacher to become an administrator? You know, they want to spend that time. They want the instruction time. They want to be with the children. And by being able to automate this in this way, you can give the child the opportunity for independent practice, which is incredibly important to build their confidence. And the teacher is getting that, the educator is getting that information back, or the parent is getting that information back. So a really common scenario here: can you name the letter? Can you recognize it? Can you say what it sounds like? And what can we do with it? So being able to use this it's extremely powerful.
Great, thanks, Brenda. And when the exam.
Amelia, there's a question here just while we're on that. So somebody's
Sure.
asking, can you say the phonemes separately and not the letter? So how would you do that within the markup?
Great. So yeah, we actually have a special markup just for that situation. So in this case, the child is shown the letter G and asked to say the letter name, but equally the child could be shown the letter G and asked to say the letter sound. So we have a markup thing called sound out, and you can also specify which pronunciation it is. So in this scenario, the child is asked what sound the letter G makes.
G.
So instead of saying G, they say G. And if you look at the phonetic breakdown, you can see that it's just the G sound underlying. One of the other functions of our engine is that you can look for multiple things at the same time. So in the scenario where a child could be shown the letter G, but could equally say the hard G or the soft G. I'll just write in soft here so we can distinguish. But the soft G is not pronounced G, but it's pronounced J.
G.
You can see that the child said the hard G and the soft G comes back scoring low. So that's a red. So yeah, this is another kind of situation of these very short sounds. And again, Brenda, I'm not sure if you wanted to say a bit more about this.
I think it's again the same thing, that the child is, in this case, or anybody who's learning to read is learning that that symbol that they're seeing can have more than one sound, and how that's applied is, this is a really good example, you know, that we know that A can be A or A. We know that G can be G, G, or J. So, you know, English particularly is quite complex because there are so many sounds associated with an individual letter sometimes. So again, in this case, a child may be getting one part of it and not the other. And we can support our partners to build programs that can say, yeah, this child is being able to give that actionable insights back to an educator. This child over here, Brenda, is, she can say her ABCs, she's learned that, but she's not getting that the sounds that go along with the letters, or she's able to say it, but she's not able to recognize it when she sees it on screen. She's able to listen and repeat, but she's not able to actually name the letter when she sees it on screen. So there are all sorts of different activities that a child can be given that hopefully are fun for the child to go through. Sometimes it's a straight assessment, it's binary, it's right or wrong, and other times it's far more subtle. And it may be part, as with EarlyBird, part of an adaptive system that is leading through and really getting into learning what the child does and doesn't know and feeding up new information. So you're getting these incredibly rich insights into the path a child is on, the trajectory a child is on, in terms of whether it's dyslexia or a simple thing that a child has missed, maybe in a phonemic awareness lesson that the child just didn't get. And if they move on to the next lesson, that foundational piece isn't there for them, so the teacher can go back and revise that with them.
Great.
There's a related question here again, Amelia. Sorry to keep interrupting, but it's better as we go through. So could you ask a child to say both sounds on the one task? So if they were to say both of those sounds and you had those two targets, would it score both of them?
It would, I think so. A keyword spot within the one audio file for the two targets. So it would find the first at the start and would find the second one at the end, and they'd both come back positive.
Yeah. Sorry, I won't interrupt you anymore. Carry on.
That's quite all right.
I will interrupt you again.
Okay,
but I won't interrupt you for a little while, is what I was going to say.
That's okay. So the next kind of logical next thing here, I think, will probably be decoding. So we see these phonemes or short sounds in isolation. But, take a situation where the child is shown the word take, for example, and asked to sound it out. So it's kind of like the opposite of what Carla was showing earlier, where the sounds were said in sequence and the child was asked to blend them. This is the child is shown a word and is asked to sound it out. Why isn't that working?
A.
It wasn't working because I hadn't pressed the button. So this is sound out again, and it's telling our system, I don't want to hear the word take. I want to hear the phonemes that make up the word take, and I want to hear them in order. And this is exactly what the child has done. And
A.
And our system is able to pick them out of the example audio file. So that's kind of like the opposite of blending, but we could also do blending. So the blending is really when you take more than one phoneme and blend it together. And that can be, what happens when you mix a k and a s sound. You get x, which is the phonic X. So another way you can approach this is if a child is shown the phonic X or the orthographical symbol X, you know that it's made up of not one underlying short sound, but two underlying short sounds blended together. In these scenarios, you need to use our custom word pronunciation markup tag. So that's shown here, and I'll just show you how this works. So that's an example of using custom word for blending. It could also be used for blending longer words together. And this kind of gets interesting because then we're into custom word scenario where you can make up anything you want and put in any phoneme string you want. And we ask our system to look for that blended together in the audio file we show you. So I think you heard me checking to see if this audio file was working earlier, and I'm just going to get it here. Brenda, maybe would you talk about I think you've something interesting to say about the prevalence of nonsense words and custom words and decoding?
Yeah. And I'm going to start a campaign to get some of these words brought into common usage because they're so great. They just sound so super. So obviously, a huge part of understanding if the child is decoding successfully is using what we call nonsense words, non-words, silly words, whatever way you want to say that. And it's an incredibly powerful way to understand how well that child is applying what they've learned and capable of decoding a completely new word that they can't ever have seen before, because in this case it doesn't exist. And some of them are really difficult, Carla, in your program. As somebody who didn't do this as a child, I struggled when my own child came along, who also interestingly had special needs, and I had to learn how to do this as an adult, so it was quite difficult. But it can be extremely difficult, but it's a really, really powerful way to find out if a child is capable of doing this new word decoding and how quickly and successfully they can do it too. So we do a lot of work with partners to help them to ensure that it's done in the correct way. And also sometimes, you know, if a non-word or a nonsense word is similar to a common word or a high frequency word, maybe they want to listen for both to see how well the child is doing at hearing those differences. So the whole multiple target scenario as well, we do a lot of work with that also.
Cool. Thanks, Brenda. And that provided a nice distraction for me to actually write in the tag. Hopefully I did it correctly and this will work.
Nebesuv.
Wow, there you go. I think I have the wrong phoneme string here, but I think you get the, I think it's nebesuv, but I think you get the idea there that whatever I write in here is what we're going to look for in the audio file. And it's nebesuv, is it? Let's try again.
Nebesuv.
There we go. See, nebesuv. So that's how clearly it can delineate between those type of very common phonemes. And you can see that, yeah, no matter what we type in here, it will just change what we're looking for. So this is very useful for those words that you were talking about, Brenda, but also for made up names of characters, and all that is very common as well in stories and games for children. So yeah, I'll leave it there. I don't want to go on too long showing you all these features, but I just wanted to recap some of the things we talked about that are very specific to early literacy, language learning, and children's edtech applications, and require speech recognition that will be able to handle all these different scenarios. So we had individual letter names as opposed to the phonemes that underlie them, or the sounds that underlie them. We have the sequence of phonemes in segmented, but also blended together. And finally, we have these custom words where you can put any string of underlying speech sounds you like and give it a title. And this can be used for nonsense words, non-words, silly words, and also place names, people names, and any kind of made up madness that goes into your product for children. So I'll leave it there. And yeah, back to you, Martin.
Great, thank you, Amelia. The good news is we have lots of questions, so I'm going to try and work my way through them in a very systematic way. And the first one, this is for you, Carla, I think. So can multiple educators on the student's education team, special needs teachers, ELD teachers, therapists, etc., access the data on the class dashboard to see their shared student?
Absolutely, they can excuse me, they can access it, see the shared student. They all can have access to the Next Steps resources, so they can all be using the same tools or playing around with different tools with different instructors. And I would say some of our most successful implementations have been when you've seen sort of a cross-functional implementation. So we have districts where the special education team worked with the general education team and they did the assessments together. And then what we're told is so beautiful is that you get a common vocabulary. So they have that very clear and simple. Even if you're not educated in the science of reading, you can see very clearly the elements of the foundational skills and what's missing, where they're strong, where they're weak, and you can have a conversation, very intelligent conversation around that child's profile without really having any background. So anyone and everyone can and should be part of that conversation that's revolved around that child, and we hear many great stories of that.
Okay, question for you, Amelia, I think. So how do you account for different accents and dialects?
Yes. This is one of the great things about modern speech technology is that we use very sophisticated modeling technology, neural networks, and we use an awful lot of diverse audio data from children speaking in different accents and dialects, not only all over the US, but all over the world. And we not only make sure that we have good representation of different accents and dialects, but we have good representation of different age groups, different genders, different backgrounds, different geographical regions, etc., to make a big diverse data pool. Also, noise conditions is very, very important. So in speech recognition in the past, in the long ago when I started out, you would usually have a British English accent speech recognizer and then another speech recognizer that did American English accent. You know, that also doesn't take into account the variety of accents within those arbitrary geographical regions. They can be quite different from one another. So the kind of bigger, newer way of doing speech recognition is much better to model all those different accents and crucially model them to say that, you know, if an American speaker and a British speaker say the letter E, that even though they sound kind of different, they are still under the same phonological category. And neural nets are very good at dealing with that. The computational power we now have allows us to process very, very large amounts of data. So our model can learn about all these different accents and dialects. And then the second thing we do is that we test quite robustly for these different accents and dialects. And this is very, very important for equity because you have to make sure that your system works well for accents that are not homogeneous. You don't just want it working for one subgroup of the entire world and then putting it out in an education system. So what we've done in-house is test very extensively on African-American English, Latino English, and we have designed that level of testing and thinking into how we build our products. And recently we were awarded a Digital Promise certification for prioritizing racial equity in AI design. We're the first and only company in the world to have received this. And it's something that we're all very, very proud of in-house.
Right, a couple for you, Carla. How long in the future will it be before you have a screener that can be used for grades 2 through 6?
Yeah, that's so grades 2 and 3 are on our roadmap. We're going to be working on that with for next year. And I can't speak to the later grades. We're really about early identification, but we also recognize that for elementary administrators and educators, they like EarlyBird so much they want it to go through to the whole elementary. So we'll see. But right now we're really focused on getting 2nd and 3rd grade up and running because I know many states are requiring assessment in that pre-K through, well, K through 3rd. And what we think is important is that early identification. That's why we have the pre-K.
And this is kind of related to that one, Carla. So it's a question about, is there a difference between the version of the game in each grade, or can it be adapted based on what a child on grade level would know in terms of phonological and phonemic awareness, letter knowledge, and phonetic concepts?
That's a great question. So it's designed very carefully to be specific to what we know they will know at that stage in their development. So it's developmentally appropriate. It's not only by grade, it's by time of year. So there are certain skills that we know that they're not going to have at the beginning of the school year because they're taught skills, they're academic skills. So we don't even assess those until maybe middle of year or end of year. And yet there are also some important caught skills, things that you come into from the home environment or from not necessarily taught academically, and we're assessing those quite early because those are important predicators or predictors of a child's ability. Oh, visitor.
Speak with the devil.
Oh, yes. We have a live pupil in the room.
This is
Celeste is famous, yeah. So George has a comment. So wonderful work, Carla. That's the comment, and also a question. How well do the reports of EarlyBird correlate with the assessments done by healthcare professionals?
It's a great question. So I think he's asking probably about a neuropsychology exam. So I will make a big distinction. EarlyBird is not a diagnostic. We're not diagnosing dyslexia. We are identifying if a child is at risk for dyslexia. And if they're at risk, meaning do they have indications, and this was based on Dr. Gabb's research. She had done a pretty large study where she followed children longitudinally for a number of years, and she took the key predictors and then followed them and saw who actually did go on to develop dyslexia. So it's based on hers and other similar research in the field. So we know the predictive variables. We can track that and we can tell you this child is at risk. It's somewhat analogous to being told that you have high cholesterol, and that might have implications for your heart health. So we want to know early, we want to address it. And that's why we talk about prevention, because if you address it early, your child will read. And so it is not to be compared to a neuropsych. Now you saw that I put up the subtests that it sort of uses as its foundation, and many of those are in a neuropsych. So it's a very exciting alternative that's cost effective and quick and pleasurable, but it is not a neuropsych.
Okay, I noticed one of our panelists is getting kisses while not one of us, which is kind of unfair. So there's a question here, Amelia, around can this assessment be used for fluency? I think the answer to that is yes. But there is a different product, but if you want to talk about that a little bit, maybe.
Yes, so there is another way of interacting with the Soapbox engine that is a little more involved, and it will do that kind of running record thing. So if a child is asked to read a longer passage, it will transcribe that passage as the child reads it, and then compare it to that text passage, indicating where there's insertions, deletions, substitutions, repetitions, self-corrections, and all that kind of good stuff. So the idea is that it will mimic what a teacher would be doing when they're doing these running records, and offer up all the kind of pre-processed analysis, so that the teacher will then save a lot of time and be able to then track whether any of the children in their class and under their room have any systematic errors longitudinally, for example. And, you know, again, this is all trying to save the teacher time, being a useful tool in the classroom. So
as a follow-up to that, there's a question around disfluencies, so false starts, hesitations. So you might just mention that that's included as well in that.
Absolutely, yeah. So any kind of self-correction, hesitation, pauses, and also we return information about the intonation of the voice as it rises and falls when the child is speaking, which gives a really good indication of how well they understand. If a child is understanding better, they're able to be more expressive in their reading. So this is a data point that can help you make a decision based on that if you're creating these tools for your product.
I think Amelia wins the prize today.
Prize for being able to answer questions while being distracted. Okay, quickly then, we're running out of time, but I just want to get through these last couple of questions. So there's a question for you, Carla, around what do you see as the obstacles to adoption within districts?
Yeah, so I think people are very excited to have something that's virtually self-administered. Teachers are busy, as you know. It takes a little getting used to, I think, a confidence thing to understand that you didn't sit there and collect the data one-on-one, but you see the value of that. And once they see the comprehensiveness of the dashboard and the story that it tells them about that child, it really allays a lot of their concerns. But I think right now, just in the time of, even though the C word, the COVID word, people have a lot going on. So the biggest barrier is just trying something new. And that's mainly, I think, the biggest thing that we've seen.
I think, you know, Carla, when we talked about this many times, you know, one of the most exciting things about this is the ability to be able to deliver this kind of screen at scale and very cost effectively. And that's really the transformational power of this, is to be able to do that. Whereas, you know, historically and traditionally, you'd have to have somebody sitting alongside the child. So
absolutely. And it's the immediacy too of it. So we have many stories of this assessment being done in the first week of school. Like we have a story of, you know, they did the whole entire school by the second Wednesday, and they identified a child who needed intervention. They started in that afternoon on interventions. And by the time that she would have typically maybe had her first face-to-face teacher assessment, she already had weeks and weeks of intervention. And that's, you know, I'd say the sweet spot of EarlyBird is really that it's easy to administer. So you do it early in the year. And again, post-COVID, everyone wants to know who's walking in my door, you know, what is that kindergarten profile? And then being able to really find those kids that otherwise would not have been identified. That's the other issue that we're seeing.
So look, I'm afraid we are out of time. I just sort of mentioned to everybody that we will be sending the recording out. If you do have any follow-up questions, then you can send them to hello@soapboxlabs.com, and we'll follow up with you. I think Dawn has also put a link there to EarlyBird. Again, I just want to thank everybody for joining. We still have over 60 attendees on the call at the moment. It's a great way for us to end the year with you, Carla. I'm very excited for the partnership that we have together. It's great that we're bringing this product to market together after meeting 4 years ago, and it's a real I think testament to the amount of work and patience and the research that has been done to get this product to this point in time. So thank you, everybody. A very happy holiday season to all of you. I know it's a little early to be saying happy holidays, but let's go with that anyway, and we look forward to seeing everybody in 2023.